Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Bates. I'm a former white supremacist, white nationalist, and today I decided to make a video. So, before I begin, bear in mind I am no professional by any means. So, hopefully, the video and audio quality are sufficient. Hopefully, you can hear me. Um, so, I've been thinking a lot lately on the question of identity and what it means to people, and I wanted to make this brief video today on that subject and what it means to me and the effect I think that the misconception of identity by the overall white nationalist movement has had on the term. Um, I'm no authority in all of this, never will pretend to be, still don't have a complete grasp on what identity really means. At this point, I think that it's at least somewhat of a subjective term that, while having some fundamental requirements, can mean myriad things to just as many people. In fact, defining it objectively seems to be part of the larger problem when it comes to extremism and identity politics. Um, Part of forming your own identity to me involves finding yourself, which can be a long or a short journey depending on the person and their personal circumstances, their environment, and their experiences. It's my belief that many white nationalists simply haven't found out who they are yet. Before being exposed to hateful ideologies, they were never able to take control of their own lives, find answers to experienced traumas and or grievances. And as a result, this left gaping vulnerabilities that were easily exploited by extremist rhetoric. White nationalism is very clever in that it offers very easy, very simplistic, superficial answers to much deeper and complex questions cloaked in pseudoscience and academic sounding affectation. This is how it hooks you. This is how it pulls you in. Um, to white nationalists, merely seeing is believing, or as they like to call it, noticing, rather than taking the time to understand the deeper underlying causes of certain phenomenon. White nationalists skim off the surface for the easily digestible cause or answer, and that's what's presented to its potential supporters. Those with the aforementioned traumatic experiences or grievances find solace in these answers, not just because they're easy, but because they come along with something else that the person has been looking for, which is identity and community. Um, so perhaps a method of successfully combating white nationalism or extremism in general can be found in helping these people find themselves before white nationalists or extremists do. Myself, I've always struggled with who I am, with my sense of purpose and identity. And part of the problem is that I always sought my identity through validation of others rather than deciding for myself in relation to others who I was and what I believed, what I truly believed, and not what I was told. Um, I come from a broken home, and as a child, I experienced somewhat of what I like to call a slow burn trauma. Um, I didn't have the absolute worst of experiences, but the experiences I did have did not lend themselves well to me being able to freely express myself and my ideas and my opinions. Rather, I was told who I was, what I believed, what I thought, and what I was to say. So I began mirroring, that which I saw in others, seeking approval and validation that way. I gave other people's opinions on who I was and what I should be far too much weight, and I ignored my own. Um, the free expression of ideas, thoughts, and opinions, which help someone form an identity and a personality, was rather strictly discouraged. And it led me to start asking, well, how do you think I should act? Or how does this person think I should act? Who is it that these people think I should be, and what is it and how is it that you believe I should think. Um, and I think this is something common to a lot of white nationalists. Something that all white nationalists seem to be incapable of is something called introspection, self-reflection. And this is intellectually deadening when one's abstract thought processes are dumbed down. They're more willing to accept bad ideas as they come along. They become more and more unable to think outside of the box they've placed themselves in with the help of the codependent relationships they've formed with other white nationalists. They're more willing to use language and commit acts that have respectively been long deemed inappropriate or illegal simply because others are doing it. Hive mind forms, and it offers them a false perception of popular support, much like a gang. Criticism of their words and actions becomes kryptonite to white nationalists, but it also it doesn't kill them, but instead it fuels the rage burning inside of them, eventually reaching a point where they lose their humanity, their empathy, their compassion, and they don't care who they hurt as long as they have approval from that in group. As long as that foundation is there, they really don't care anymore. In short, they become monsters in their soul, if that makes any sense. White nationalists have no sense of what true identity is because they limit identity to nothing more than race, and that's it. Nothing more than race or your ethnicity. This builds upon the external locus of identity that makes the person value themselves only as others value them. And that's not the definition of identity whatsoever. Where we come from biologically does have an impact on our identity, but it is not, nor should it ever be, the core of our identity, because that, among other things, immediately puts someone in contrast with the rest of humanity. One's biological makeup is just a small part of who you really are, not all of who you are. And allowing it to dictate your interactions with the world is dangerous and self-defeating. So, who are you really? We find that out by our personal experiences and experiences with others, not by telling each other who we are. That's sort of the definition of a cult in one respect. So just stop for a moment. I'm speaking now to people who are thinking about joining the movement or are already in the movement. So just stop for a moment and just reflect on who you are. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you believe that is who you are? What experiences have you had that make you believe what you do? Did someone else tell you that's who you are? Is it someone else's idea? Is it something external to you that has influenced you to become who you are? These are questions that I feel are rarely asked of oneself in general, in the general population, and if ever among supporters or members of the White Nationalist Movement. I think that by conducting some healthy introspection and attempting to find one's own identity outside of the influence of all these negative things can be a huge first step in realizing that white nationalism is morally wrong. Absolutely morally wrong. And bad not just for the self, but for the world. It's a public health crisis. It's also the first step in leaving the movement, which on its own is frightening enough, trust me. It's intimidating for many reasons, but the reward for getting over those emotional obstacles and finding yourself is definitely worth it. Just believe me, it's definitely worth it. So I ask those with whom we come in contact with, and we being formers or people who are trying to leave the movement, just kind of take it easy on us a little bit as we transition out of the movement. It's tough for us. Not asking for sympathy, of course, but we're having to constantly deny certain thoughts and feelings that our previous fears, words, and actions have made knee-jerk or even instinctual. Our de-radicalization involves a literal rewiring of the brain, and it's inevitable that we will mess up along the way. I've done it already. It isn't to say that we shouldn't be corrected when we do make mistakes, because we certainly should. Everyone learns by making mistakes and being corrected. But an instructive approach, constructive criticism, is by far the best approach. So, so far for me, the response and support that I've gotten over the past 6, close to 7 months now has been overwhelmingly positive, and despite a few missteps, and for that I'm grateful. So to everyone out there who has reached out or followed or supported me in any way, shape, or form, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It is very encouraging. It is very uplifting. All that being said, I invite anyone still active in the movement to, self-reflect. Take a look at yourself, your life, your friends, your loved ones, and ask yourself if those things are worth sacrificing for people who could not care less about you and your future. They could not care less. Take some time to consider where you will end up. Not where you might end up, but where you will end up should you continue down the path you're on right now. As a former who spent the better part of a decade in various white nationalist groups and organizations, trust me, it's a dead-end road. It was a complete waste of my time that I cannot get back, ever. And I selfishly robbed my family of what would have otherwise been quality time spent with them, and I hurt a lot of innocent people in the process. I ask that you appeal to your better judgment, because you do have it. You're just suppressing it. Appeal to your better judgment so that you don't experience the same shame, guilt, and regret that I and so many other formers have endured. It's not something you want to go through. It's emotionally taxing, and it takes a while to get over. And the longer you're in, or the worse things you do, the longer it's going to take and the harder it's going to be. But that being said, Brian Stevenson once said that each of us is more than the worst things we've ever done. I beg you, please don't follow my example. Don't let your ego and pride stand in the way, and don't think for a second that your past defines who you are now and what you can become. There's no shame in one admitting that you're wrong. There's no shame in it. It's a step forward. It demonstrates a lot of courage and a willingness to change. And people will see that. If you're genuine, people will notice it. I won't mislead you into saying that leaving white nationalism behind was easy. It's a very difficult road. And more so for some who've invested a lot of their time and talents into it. But it can be done, and there are people out there that are ready and willing to help you, to guide you along the way, if you'll just give them the chance. Just give them the chance. So if you're in the movement, I implore you to reach out to someone who's been where you are now. You may be surprised at how much support, compassion, and encouragement is out there waiting for you. Thanks for watching.